Hello everybody, this is the topic on food crystallization, and in this lecture I will focus on, or I will discuss on the conditions required for crystallization. As you can see on the slide here, products like chocolate or margarine consist of fat crystals. Where do these crystals come from? So for example, in the chocolate, the crystals actually or come from the cocoa butter. This cocoa butter is actually the fat derived from cocoa, and the cocoa butter gives a special unique property of chocolate in terms of the melting property as well as the texture of the chocolate. And the margarine is made from vegetable oil such as palm oil or corn oil, and the crystallization is induced to produce the fat crystal and increase the solid fat, which form the plastic texture of the margarine. And what about the, what is this? This is the sugar candy. And the sugar candy is basically made from sugar, and the sugar is also crystallized to form the hard crystal. So obviously the products contain different types of crystal, but you must also understand that the way the crystals are formed during crystallization process are also different. So let's just explore in more detail, shall we? Let's look at the most common example of crystal that we eat every day, the table sugar or sucrose. Commercially, sugar is produced from sugar cane. I'm sure everyone knows about sugar cane. This is my favorite when I was a small kid. And sugar can also be produced from sugar beet. In some countries like Japan, they have production of sugar from sugar beet. So the white granulated sugar that we see here can be produced from a controlled crystallization of the sugar syrup or the juice, which we extract from the sugar cane or from the sugar beet. So the sugar juice is basically technically is a sugar solution. So when we say a solution, we have sucrose. We have sucrose as the solute and water as the solvent. So this is what we have in this sugar syrup or the juice that we obtain from the sugar cane. So this is actually one example of the crystallization which starts from a solution. Honey is another example of sugar solution because it contains soluble sugars such as sucrose, fructose, and glucose. Maybe you have seen that after you stored honey for a long time, you can see some of the sugar actually crystallize, as you can see in the picture here. So you can see some like a solids suspended in the liquid honey. So this is again another form of, or another example of crystallization which start from solution. So in the previous slides we have seen examples of crystallization which starts from solution. On this slide we can also actually start the crystallization process from a milk. Okay. So as you can see in this picture, here we have a chocolate milk containing mixtures of triglycerides. Okay, triglycerides, and these triglycerides have different melting points. When we cool the chocolate milk below the melting point of the triglycerides, they will crystallize to form a solid crystal. So in the process of chocolate making, this step is called tempering. Okay, so I hope you can read more about this tempering step in the chocolate making. And this process or this step has to be controlled very carefully to ensure we get the right type of crystals. And here is another example of crystallization from a milk. In this case, we can start from a liquid vegetable oil. So this is actually the liquid vegetable oil, and it can be any kind of vegetable oil such as palm oil, corn oil, canola oil. And by cooling down the triglycerides, or by cooling down the oil, it will cause the triglycerides in the oil to crystallize, and again it will form a solid crystal. So this will increase the solid fat content and form a plastic texture products, which is the margarine as we see here in this picture. So now let's look at the crystallization starting from a solution. I will use sucrose as an example here to explain. So at any temperature, let's refer to this diagram of the graph of solubility of sucrose in water here. So we plot the percent solubility of sucrose as a function of temperature. So for example, we can see at 30 degree, okay, at 30 degrees Celsius around here, and we can see what's the solubility. So we can read the value of solubility at 30 degrees Celsius for sucrose is around 68, just make it round, 68%. So this means that if you have 100 ml of water at 30 degrees Celsius, we can dissolve up to 68 gram sucrose. But now if you add more than 68 gram, the sugar won't dissolve because the solution has become super saturated. So when you add more sugar or more solute above its solubility value, it cannot dissolve anymore because the solvent, which is the water in this case, cannot take up anymore or cannot solubilize anymore. So we can plot a graph of percent solubility against temperature as shown here, and the curve, this curve that you see here, is called a solubility curve. Okay, and obviously you can see as we increase the temperature in this direction, the solubility of the sucrose or the solute also will increase, meaning that at higher temperature here, more solids will be dissolved, but at lower temperature, for example here, less solid will be dissolved. And the curve that the solubility curve here is also known as equilibrium solubility curve. Any point on this line, any point on this line is the value of equilibrium solubility, or we give the notation CEQ. Okay, any point on this line is the solubility value of the sucrose at equilibrium. For the crystallization to occur, we actually need a thermodynamic driving force, or the daya penggerak. In the case of crystallization from a solution, for example, sugar solution that we are discussing here, the thermodynamic driving force is supersaturation. Okay, the supersaturation is generated when the concentration of a solute exceeds its equilibrium solubility. So as we have seen in the previous slide, in the solubility curve here, the line here represents the solubility curve, equilibrium solubility curve, and any point on the line here is actually equilibrium solubility, and any point above this line is actually in a supersaturated state. So we can express the supersaturation of the solution by taking the difference between the concentration of a saturated solution. Let's say we give notation CSS as the concentration of the saturated solution, and minus the concentration at the equilibrium, which is the equilibrium solubility. So the delta C, which is the degree of the supersaturation of the solution, is the difference between the concentration of the saturated solution minus the concentration of the equilibrium at the equilibrium solubility. So meaning that, for example, at this point, okay, so this is the CEQ value, and the difference between this is the delta C. Supersaturation of the solution also can be expressed as S, and we take the ratio of CSS to the CEQ. Okay, now let's examine the solubility curve more carefully. Okay, we have a solubility curve here. So this is the equilibrium solubility curve or equilibrium solubility line. Any point below this line, this is actually the undersaturated state, and we cannot get any crystallization, or crystallization is thermodynamically impossible in this undersaturated region. If we dissolve any, say, seed crystal here, it will just dissolve without growing. Okay. Whereas the region above this line, if we go above this line, so any point here is in the supersaturated state, and crystallization is thermodynamically possible or theoretically possible. But it is not always the case, meaning that although we have the solution is already supersaturated, meaning that we are already above the solubility line here, and by right we should get a crystallization to start or to occur. But there is actually a zone. So let me draw, say, a line, and this line not necessarily is here, it can be anywhere. So there is a zone between the solubility blue curve here and the dashed line, and this zone is known as metastable zone. What this zone means is in this anywhere in this metastable zone, the spontaneous or homogeneous nucleation will not occur. So the keyword here is spontaneous, meaning that in the metastable zone we would not get any spontaneous nucleation, and the supersaturated solution will remain in the solution form without any crystallization indefinitely, provided there is no foreign particles such as dust or if we add any seed crystal, because if we add, say, a seed crystal in the metastable zone, this seed crystal can grow. Okay, so in other words, in the metastable zone we cannot get spontaneous nucleation, but if we add seed crystal, or if there is any dust or any foreign particles, it can grow. Yeah. So if we want to get a spontaneous nucleation, we have to actually raise the concentration of the solution not only past the solubility line into the supersaturated state, and but we have to pass also through the metastable zone, so that we get into this zone. This is called labile zone. So in the labile zone, the supersaturated solution is in the thermodynamic in the non-equilibrium state and very unstable. So it will try to crystallize because to go into the lower energy state. Okay, another thing that I want to point out here is the width or of this metastable zone. It can be bigger or it can be smaller, so it depends on several factors during the process of crystallization. For example, the stirring, the solvent that we use, the temperature, pressure, the presence of impurities, and the surface characteristics of the crystallization vessel as well. All these factors actually can determine the width or the size of this metastable zone. So okay, let's summarize what we have learned so far in this short lecture. So we have seen that we can start a crystallization from a solution. So this the common example would be the crystallization of sugar from sugarcane or sugar beet, or we can also start a crystallization from milk, for example in the making of chocolate or margarine from chocolate milk or from the vegetable liquid oil. So, and we also learn about the solubility curve. So we can plot the percent of solute against temperature, and we can determine the solubility value or the equilibrium solubility value of the solute at different temperatures. And we have seen that the solubility increase as we increase the temperature. And we have defined the meaning of supersaturation and the metastable zone. In the next lecture, we will discuss in more detail, based on the solubility curve, how we can get the crystallization to occur by controlling the temperature, the rate of cooling, and the concentration.